Hey, it's Daniel from Theology is for Everyone with more insights in Matthew. Matthew chapters 24 and 25 together are what we call the Olivet Discourse. It's Wednesday of Passion Week, and Jesus and the disciples are leaving Jerusalem. And the disciples say, hey, look at the buildings of the temple. You see how nice they look? Herod had been remodeling, the Herodian family had been remodeling the temple area for almost 50 years by this point. You know, long-term remodeling construction. And it was looking pretty good, probably. And the disciples were pointing some things out we see in chapter 24. And they were pointing them out to Jesus. Hey, look how nice this looks. And Jesus said something that just sort of, ruined the whole conversation in a sense. He said, do you see all these things? Chapter 24, verse 2. I tell you the truth, not one stone will be left on another. All will be torn down. Well, that just sort of brings the whole conversation to an end, doesn't it? So the disciples ask two questions. When will this happen? And what will be the sign of the end of the age and your coming? Because they knew that he was going to come, which brings up a whole nother, discussion point in theology that he was somehow going to come and bring the age to an end. Don't forget, they don't know anything about the church yet, really. Okay, so they're thinking the end of the age is whatever the Hebrew prophets said. And that's key to understanding chapters 24 here and 25 in the next video, is that this is not about the church at all. It's not about the church. This is about the nation of Israel, the Gentile nations surrounding them, in what most people call the tribulation period, or what Daniel called the 70th week of his prophecy in chapter 9. Jesus said, well, first of all, Jesus didn't answer the first question, when is this going to happen? He didn't answer it. Just skipped it all over and went straight to the second question, what's the sign of your coming in the end of the age? He said, first of all, let me tell you what are not the signs. There's going to be wars, there's going to be rumors of wars, world wars, earthquakes, famines, lots of stuff happening. Everybody who says, oh, look at all this stuff happening in the world, it's the signs of the times. Jesus said, no, it's really not the signs of the times. It doesn't really tell you anything. All of these things have to happen, but it is not yet the end. They will happen. So if you hear people, oh, because of this sign or this, blood moons and, the other things that are all over the place, don't worry about it. Verses 9 through 14 sounds very similar to chapter 10, actually, when Jesus was giving the apostles instructions. You're going to be handed over. People are going to speak against you. Don't worry about what you say. A lot of this is being repeated. Except instead of it happening right then in chapter 10, now he pushes it off to future. It wasn't supposed to be future, but Israel had rejected Messiah. So now it is future, and it'll happen during the 70th week of Daniel. Verse 14, a lot of people misinterpret and say that in order to be saved, you have to persevere to the end. There's a whole doctrine called the perseverance of the saints that says that basically if somebody doesn't persevere, they're not really saved, or they've never been saved. But we can't forget, again, this isn't about the church. We're not preaching the gospel of the kingdom at this time. We're preaching the gospel of the cross and the resurrection. And verse 14 says that during this time period, the gospel of the kingdom is going to be preached. So we know that this isn't talking about the church. This is another time period which is still future now, even from the church. Verse 15, so when you see the abomination of desolation prophesied by Daniel. Well, again, that is in chapter 9 at the midpoint of the 70th week, or a 7-year period that is yet to come. The midpoint of that time, the man of lawlessness is what Paul called him in 2 Thessalonians 2. Most people call him the Antichrist, is going to break a covenant that he had made or guaranteed with Israel, saying that he would protect them for 7 years. That's Daniel 9:27. But in the middle of that time, he's going to break his covenant. And 2 Thessalonians 2 says he's actually going to exalt himself as God in the temple of God. And Jesus said, when that happens, run. Run as fast as you can, run as hard as you can, because it is going to be disastrous, specifically for the Jewish people. Revelation 12 says that it will be for the Jewish people and for other believers during that time as well, that Satan is actually going to wage war against the saints. Daniel 7 says that this coming ruler, Antichrist, is going to wage war against the Jewish people. And so it's going to be a horrible time. And then verse 29, immediately after the suffering of those days, there's going to be the sign of the Son of Man show up in the heavens. And he's going to send his angels to gather the elect from the four winds from one end of heaven to the other. A lot of people see this as a rapture passage, the rapture of the church, like in 1 Thessalonians chapter 4. But again, it cannot be. The church has already been removed before this point. This is talking about the end of the 70th week of Daniel. It has nothing to do with the church. Again, starting in verse 36, it will be like in the days of Noah. There will be one in the field, or two in the field, one will be taken, the other one left. See, look, the Christians are going to be taken away. But that's not what it is. If you look at the parallel between Jesus' teaching here about the future and the time of Noah, the people who were taken away by the flood to judgment and destruction. The flood took them all away. And Jesus said, in the same way, two will be in the field and one will be taken away. What is that? Salvation? No. It's taken away to judgment. Okay? See the parallels here. Again, verses 45 through the end of the chapter talks about a wise and faithful servant or a foolish and evil servant. Well, in the church, all believers are servants of Jesus Christ. Whether we're faithful or not, we're still all servants. You say, yeah, I have no problem with that. But look what happens to the evil servant, the unfaithful servant. When he is not doing what he is supposed to do, verse 50, the master of that slave will come on a day when he does not expect him, at an hour he does not foresee, and will cut him in two, and will assign him a place with the hypocrites where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. That doesn't happen to Christians. That does not happen to believers in Christ from the church. There is no condemnation, Romans 8:1, for those who are in Christ Jesus. So in our insights, of course, there's a ton of more stuff we can do in Matthew 24. But in our insights, it's very key to understand as we interpret Matthew 24 and 25 next time, that this is not about the church. The church has already been removed by this point, and this is the time, broadly speaking, this is part of the overall day of the Lord, the wrath that is coming. And 1 Thessalonians 1:10 says that Jesus is the one who is rescuing us from the coming wrath. And 1 Thessalonians 5 says we are not consigned to wrath. We don't have to worry about that. But this will happen on Israel and unbelieving Gentiles throughout the world. Still future. See you next time.